Hare Krishna. This is the first talk in a series of talks on the 10 Maxims, as originally written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the great Vaishnavas in our line. He produced something called the Dashamula Niryas, or the 10 root principles of Vaishnava philosophy. Later on, it became a book known as the Dashamula Shiksha, or the 10 essential instructions. So we start tonight with a definition of some key terms that you will hear. First is, and I'm following the format of a book I wrote on the subject. First is the absolute truth. We hear this a lot in our circles. Absolute truth means the truth which is not contradicted at any point in time or by any set of circumstances. It's not a claim that something is the absolute truth, but it's a philosophical principle which can be argued, it can be debated, and different people will come to understand the truth, yes, in different ways. And I hope you remember the old story of the elephant keeper who was walking his elephant. He was an elephant keeper, is a mahout. He's walking his elephant through the jungle, and he comes across a school for the blind. The blind people have been blind since birth, and they all come up to the elephant, and they feel the elephant in different places. And one says, who's got a hold of the trunk, he says, oh, this elephant is rather like a snake. And one feels the side of his back, and he says, no, an elephant is rather like a wall, I think you'll find. And then one is holding onto the tail. He says, oh no, an elephant is rather like a vine creeping up a tree. Another one holds onto the ear. He says, no, I think you'll find that an elephant, I think you'll find, is rather like a winnowing basket. Another one's holding on to the leg of the elephant. He said, no, not at all. An elephant is something rather like a tree trunk. And they're all beginning to give their opinions. Meanwhile, the mahout, who has two eyes and who can see and who actually knows what an elephant is, he's laughing to himself. Because he knows that every one of those blind men is speaking the truth, but not quite the absolute truth. They're speaking the truth relative to their position. So that's one thing. So in philosophy, we like to be able to argue for the existence of an absolute truth. And we follow a logical system of philosophical debate in order to arrive at that absolute truth. Just as if it was, say, raining, and I looked out the window and I said, oh, it's raining. That's a true statement. But tomorrow, when it's not raining, it will not be a true statement. So the statement is conditional. It's true, but it's conditional based on the weather. In the same way, we can speak something that is true, but it may be true for us. It may be true conditionally. It may be true relatively. And therefore, we have to try to find what is an absolute truth. So philosophers argue about these things. They discuss these things. That's the first principle. Not the first principle of the 10 Maxims, but just by way of introduction. What is philosophy? Well, it's a love of knowledge. Philo, love of sophos, knowledge, and a love of ultimate knowledge in particular. And that ultimate is the business of those who like to try to find what is the upper levels of the absolute truth. A byword for God in philosophical circles is ultimate reality. Sometimes people don't talk about God, because in order to talk about God, you have to first of all prove that God exists even before you talk about such a being. So ultimate reality is something that can be perceived, something that's real in ordinary terms if you can perceive it with your senses. You can see it, you can hear it, you can smell it, you can touch it. But the senses can be wrong, as in the case of the elephant people, or a mirage in a desert. For instance, now you're seeing the complete oasis, but because the oasis is 20 miles away and the mirage makes you feel that it is 20 feet away, your senses of being duped. You are actually seeing an oasis, but you're not seeing the distance. So therefore, it's real, but it's not the ultimate reality of the senses. So reality must be real, quite independent of sense perception, and it's really real. And when we discover something which doesn't depend on the instruments of perception, which are always flawed, we will discover an ultimate reality, that which beyond there is nothing more real. So in the same way, you could say that it's a source reality, reality beyond the realities that we experience. In a similar vein, we have another piece of terminology here, which you will hear in Vaishnava circles for sure, but definitely in Eastern philosophical circles, the cause of all causes. Have you heard that expression before? The cause of all causes. So every phenomena that you can experience with one of your senses has a cause. This is how we perceive time. Time is perceived by a cause giving rise to an effect, and the effect becomes a cause and gives rise to another effect. And this chain of cause and effect we perceive as time. So when chemical elements combine to form a compound, the elements are the cause and the compound is the effect, and they can combine in different ways. So all phenomena that can be experienced are composed of multiple chains of cause and effect. A Vedic philosophy speaks of instrumental causes, those close to the witnessed phenomenon. In other words, here's my glass. I sip water from the glass. What is the cause of this glass of water? Well, the instrumental cause is that I went downstairs, put water in my glass, and brought it upstairs. That's the cause. Then the remote cause, as opposed to the instrumental cause, is something like, well, it comes from the water tap, which comes from a pipe, which comes from the water station, which comes from the rain, which comes from clouds, which comes from, etc. These are the chain of remote causes. So when we get to closer to the cause, or the first cause, we have discovered the cause of all causes. So this is the realm of philosophy. Philosophy has different meanings now because Western philosophy is branched into many different types, many different elements of philosophy. But originally the philosophy meant the love of wisdom, the love of knowledge, and love of higher knowledge. And it's a study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. In the classical West, that is long before people like Wittgenstein and Hegel and all different, especially the German philosophers, got hold of it. Philosophia had three main branches. Epistemology, which is going to concern us tonight. Epistemology is how do we know what we know? That's part of philosophy that answers that question. And the others were ethics and metaphysics. So the Vedic concept of philosophy is a search for wisdom that ultimately leads to personal transformation and liberation. So where does religion fit in? Well, religion is underpinned by philosophy. What does the word mean? Religion perhaps comes from two words, re, or re, in Latin is again, and then legare, which means to bind, to connect. Just like you have your thigh bone and your shin bone, and they're connected by a ligament. So ligament, ligare, it connects. So re-ligare, to be connected again. Religion often makes the claim that we have become separated from God, the ultimate source, the ultimate reality, the cause of all causes, and that we are trying to again become connected to it. However, the postmodern study of religion looks at religion through the point of view, the perspective of anthropology, which looks at religion and says, how do they worship? What language do they use? What hats do they wear? What do they call the place of worship? What are their ceremonies, etc.? Do they sing? Do they chant? And according to an anthropologist, pretty much every religion is worthy of respect. And there is no, for an anthropologist studying religion, there is no ultimate cause. It's just something which human beings make up in order to explain themselves. And this is why we're normally studying about religion through the eyes of anthropologists or historians or scientists. We never quite get to philosophy. So the Vedic concept of religion is that the divine, the ultimate source, the original source, is an objective reality, not a subjective phenomenon. In other words, the ultimate reality is not just something that you believe or that you feel that you experience, but is an object that is subjective. An objective reality is it's real whether you believe in it or not. That's the Vedic concept. And it's the origin of all dharma, all moral and spiritual discipline. And then the word theology means the study of that, which is theo, which is God, or Godhead. Spirituality is another word which we hear a lot. I use the word. I've used all these words. But spirituality means, it's not our word actually, it's a Christian word. Although we like to think that Christianity is religion and spirituality is what we do, but actually spirituality is a Christian word. Spirit means animating or vital principle, and it's derived from, I'll just tell you, the Latin word spiritus, which means soul, breath, and it's related to spirare, or to breathe. And different cultures over time have understood the idea that spirit is something that animates us. And then so let me just introduce you to another word, mysticism. Mysticism. And people like to look at Eastern religions, Eastern philosophy as leading to mysticism. What does it mean? It means the experience of alternate states of consciousness and religious ecstasies, together with whatever ideology and practice may be related to them. So it's come to mean union with the absolute or the infinite or God. So we agree with that. But what is God? You would find the word God in Western religions is the supreme being or ultimate reality. And God has to possess three elements in order to be God. according to Western philosophy. One is that God must be omniscient, or all-knowing. Omni is all, and niscient, all science, all-knowing. Omnipotent, all-powerful. And omnibenevolent, supremely good. The word God comes from the word, let's examine that, but supremely good, omnibenevolent. So in other words, God knows everything, has the power to do anything, and is perfectly good. God is the creator and ruler of the universe and the source of moral authority. The word God is derived from the Old German Gudan, from the Proto-Indo-European Gutam, which in turn came from the Sanskrit Huta, Huta, one who is called, one who is invoked and worshipped by sacrifice. A word that we use a lot, and I apologize if my extended glossary right at the very beginning is taxing for you, but Godhead is actually from a Middle English word, Godheed or Godhood. It means the sum total of that which is God, everything all together. So these are the different terms that people generally use when they are embarking on a search for ultimate value, ultimate meaning. They're trying to, ultimately, all of this is to be happy and stop suffering, or to stop suffering and be happy. Often it's not about enlightenment, but it's just, I need something in my life. I need to know. I need to move away from distress. I want the answers. Let me explore. Now, in the Upanishads, which are the philosophical texts of the Vedas, the overarching schemata, if you like, is to try to understand three things. What is God? What is the soul? And what is matter? So if you understand the relationship between the soul, jiva, the God, Ishvara, and material nature, Prakriti, then you've understood. You must understand what is Maya, how we kept in. And this way the Upanishads very gently take those tattvatraya, three truths, and gently massage them into five. And it's clarified in a book known as the Harita Samhita as five elements of philosophy, philosophical inquiry. One is prapya, which means the nature of Brahman. Brahman means that which is great. Greater than me, greater than you. Prapya. Second is prapta, the nature of the soul or the spiritual being who seeks to realize Brahman. And as what is beyond this world. Number three, prapti upaya, the method of attaining that goal of enlightenment. Phala, the nature of the goal. And finally, what could it be? What could the fifth one be? Prapti virodhi, the obstacles in the way of realizing the goal. So we have the prapya, the nature of Brahman to be attained. So what is God? What is Brahman? The prapta, the individual soul who seeks to realize the Supreme Soul. Prapti upaya, the method. What's the connection? If we know the connection, then we'll know the way to attain the ultimate goal. And phala, the nature of the goal. What happens when you get there? What's enlightenment like? How do you experience it? What are the grades? What are the degrees? And prapti virodhi, the obstacles. So, all of this is very interesting, which brings us very nicely as an introduction to the business of what is the first element of the 10 elements that will help us on our journey to understand the ultimate reality or the absolute truth? Well, the first one says everyone, every philosopher, is praman. Praman. Praman means evidence. It means proof. Did you see the man steal the car? Yes, I saw him. Can you make a statement? Will you come into the police station and make a statement? Yes, I will. And what is the evidence? Well, I took a picture on my phone as he was stealing the car. That's evidence which may or may not be admitted. And then I tried to stop him taking the car, so I pulled at his jacket. I pulled off a button. Here it is. Here it is. Here's the button. And then we find that the button and the thread matches the missing button on the jacket of the man who was supposed to have stolen the car. That is proof. That's called praman. So what is praman? Normally, it's what we see, touch, taste, hear, smell. This is the way that we attain praman. It's called pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means sense perception. In other words, here's a microphone, here's some water, here's the screen, here's the number of current viewers, 22. And so this is the world I live in, the world of things that I can see, touch, taste, smell, and hear. And normally I call that reality. But if I want to try to move beyond the world of sense perception into the world of absolute truth, then I may need to change my modus operandi. I may need to change my degree of perception. So the next level is Hanuman. That's not Hanuman. That's the monkey warrior. Hanuman means inference. In other words, if you're a policeman, you're presented with evidence, and you draw a conclusion based on the evidence. You did not see, as a policeman, you did not see the man trying to steal the car, but you're dealing with a witness who did. So based on their evidence, you develop a conviction. Conviction is probably the wrong word, but you develop a hunch that, yes, this is leading us somewhere. Because the same man was seen stealing another car a couple of months ago. So how do we know it's the same man? Well, he has a tattoo of a spider's web on top of his bald head. Bit of a giveaway. If you want to be a criminal, don't have tattoos. So now, I did not see that man steal the car, but I know someone who did. This is Hanuman. What's an inference? Then the man walks into the police station and he says, yep, hands up. I stole the car. I stole the car because I'm poor and my mother is on dialysis and I really needed the money, etc., etc. These are called mitigating circumstances. But it doesn't change the fact that you stole the car and you sold it. So when that man speaks, when the criminal speaks, that is called shabda. Shabda is authoritative testimony. Authoritative testimony. Why is it authoritative? Why is it good? Why is it good evidence? Because he's the criminal and he's owning up. So we have different levels of proof going on here. But what about God? What about the understanding of God? Where are you going to find evidence like that? Well, that shabda has to come from a different area. So we'll go into that in a second. So this is the first element. If you don't do this element, if you don't qualify the sources of truth that you're going to explore, then you can't move forward with your argument. Either we're going to have something based on science, which is good. Science is good, it's not bad, but it's flawed because it's ever-changing, not absolute. Or you're going to have it based on, my guru says, my teacher says this. Well, that's good, but it may not be conclusive. And so I'll speak in a minute about what is considered in Vedic circles to be conclusive evidence. But let's go to, we should speak for another, say, 5 minutes or so, then we can go to questions. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, based on other lists of principles in the past, he lists 10 as follows. And these are things that he has concluded from his research using the Shabda of the Vedas. There I've given a clue away. So this is the second element of the 10 maxims that we will be studying based on the Praman of the Vedas. Paramatattva, he says that Sri Hari or Krishna is the absolute truth. So we've just jumped to that. So the Praman is copious, but we have to go through it and we have to establish what is spirit, what is Brahman, what is the soul, what is the different levels of Brahman, etc., etc., etc. So it's a long sequence of proofs that we need in order to establish Krishna. But to fit everything into 10, a sequence of 10, he talks about Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. And what we're doing here, of course, is we're saying that the whole of Vaishnava philosophy can be explained in 10 points. And these are the 10 points. So these are not a logical sequence of arguments leading us to something. These are just a contraction of the entirety of Vaishnava philosophy, leading us to have something compact that we can hold in our hands and we can say, these 10 things, I believe in these 10 things. Number 3 is Sarva Shaktiman. Krishna is the possessor of all potency. Number 4, Akila Rasamrita Sindhu. He's the ocean of all nectarian mellows, all rasas. 5, Vibhinam Satattva. The jivas are Krishna's parts and parcels, but they are separated from him. 6, Bada jivas. Some souls are conditioned. Mukta jivas. Some souls are liberated. 8 is the Chinti Beda Beda Tattva. The entire universe is simultaneously different and non-different from Krishna. Then 9, Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service or Bhakti Yoga, is the only practice to attain perfection of enlightenment. And Krishna Priti, love of Krishna, is the one and only final object of that enlightenment. So the Sadhya Vastu means the object of perfection, Sadhya. Sadhana is the means of attaining something, and Sadhya is what you get when you get to the end. So that is the introduction. And we move on to Praman. Let's do a little of the Praman so that we can cover that. So Vedic writers, Vedic theologians, Vedic philosophers, they spend a lot of time when writing or discussing, establishing Praman, or establishing what is a source of, if we're going to have a debate, let's discuss the parameters of the debate. What do we agree to debate on? Mostly it's logic, isn't it? Most people will quote from historical or scientific sources in order to prove what they're trying to establish. But we have to imagine that we're in a different era, we're in a different category now. So we take the basic situation that we're in is that we experience pain and we try to mitigate pain. We experience pleasure and we try to prolong pleasure. And philosophy can help us to do one and mitigate the other. So the first question of philosophy is, if knowledge is what we're searching for, in other words, let's say I have toothache, well then knowledge can help to put an end to my toothache. Firstly, I can go to the dentist, and the dentist has knowledge that I do not have. I don't know anything about the health of my teeth. So the dentist knows exactly what to do. He knows exactly what the problem is, and he fixes it for me. And he ends my pain. And then he gives me some knowledge. He says, well, if you brush your teeth regularly, and if you do this and do that and use these little things that go in between your teeth, and, clean your tongue and rinse your mouth and do all these things, then that will help to prevent pain in the future. So knowledge prevents pain and it solves the problem of pain. So knowledge is a solution. And in fact, if you look at any problem in the world, you will discover that a little bit of extra knowledge would have solved the problem or prevented the problem. So how do we get knowledge? What is real knowledge and what is just another form of ignorance? Many years ago, knowledge was that the newly produced fertilizer known as DDT, was it no, not fertilizer, but it was a weed killer, wasn't it? The DDT was something not harmful to humans. And I remember seeing a black and white film of people in a swimming pool in America, and they sprayed the pool and the swimmers with DDT, saying that it's perfectly safe for human beings. Now, we would never ever do that. Or that we used to get advertisements on the TV, and doctors would come on smoking and say that if you smoke menthol cigarettes, it's good for you, there's no problem. Not only would the doctors be banned, but you wouldn't even get anywhere near creating a television ad like that. So we used to think something, but now we know something else. So there's changing knowledge. We're not interested in changing knowledge. We want knowledge that is less relative, that is more dependable. We can't depend on people who say, well, I have my truth and you have your truth. That's not truth. It's an opinion. And it's okay to have, you can have an opinion, but don't tell me it's your truth. It's true for you, but it's not the truth. Then people say, well, there's no such thing as the truth. There's no absolute truth. There's no objective truth. It's all subjective. Well, is that an absolute truth? Is it an absolute truth that there's no such thing as the absolute truth? No. I think you'll find it's just your subjective truth that there's no such thing as the absolute truth. Okay. So we did a little bit about evidence. And the interesting thing is when we're trying to depend on the evidence of our eyes, we should understand that many creatures have a different, highly advanced level of eyesight. For instance, an eagle can see, it's the equivalent of you standing on the top of a multi-story car park and seeing an ant moving on the ground, on the pavement. Unbelievable eyesight. The eagle can be a mile high in the sky. You can see a tiny little rabbit or a tiny little bird and can swoop down from a great height, because the fovea in an eagle's eyes are is greatly enhanced. So similarly, we have when I came through the airport in New York just recently, they have dogs, and the dogs have a level of smelling power which is many thousands of times greater than humans. That's why they can be trained to find drugs. They can be trained for anything, actually. Everything's got a smell. They can find human beings that are being smuggled, drugs that are being smuggled, vegetation, fish, anything. You don't stand a chance with a sniffer dog. So even animals have a greater power of pratyeka than we do. So we should not be overly proud of what we can see and hear, because we really can't see. You switch the lights off, you can't see anything. But a bat is so powerful that it can fly anywhere by sending out signals and hearing the echoes coming back. So we talked about Shabda, authoritative testimony from the person who saw the criminal stealing the car. Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, all the Vedic scholars say that our Shabda is that which is coming from a source which is higher than the plane of relative truth. In other words, knowledge coming from a divine source, knowledge coming from a source which is not influenced by Maya. This knowledge is known as Veda. Veda, the other cognate of Veda is Vidya, or knowledge itself. And the Upanishads of the Vedas, we had some of the Vedas are for the purposes of a prosperous life in this world and an elevated life in the next. But the Upanishads deal with the difference between matter and spirit. And they're really about how to attain happiness, which is not conditional on karma. By karma, we become happy, or by karma, we become sad, depressed, lonely, and bereft of support. According to our deeds, we inherit karma phala, or the fruits of karma. But we want happiness which is not dependent on something I've done or not done, something good or something bad. And that is called higher level of. So the Upanishads tell us about that. The Puranas tell us of the appearance of God within this world, when Vishnu appears in this world, when Krishna appears, and speaks with sages and speaks with kings, and delivers this higher knowledge and how it's passed down in human society. And the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge is the Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Bhagavat Purana. So from that we get the unconditioned knowledge. All right, so we'll have a discussion there, but okay, that's the end of lesson 1. Hare Krishna.